Severe weather can happen in metro Atlanta, North Georgia, and in the state of Georgia at any time of year. We normally think of severe storms happening in the springtime. Well, yes, that's when they're most likely, but severe storms can happen in the summertime. They can happen in the fall with cold fronts moving through and with tropical weather, and they can happen even in the middle of wintertime. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Holcomb from the 11 Alive Weather Impact Team. We're doing this extended weather special on severe weather to help you get prepared and to keep your family safe as we get closer to the more impactful spring severe weather season. And as meteorologists, there's so much more to it than just looking over into Alabama and Mississippi and looking to see if a line of showers and storms is moving our way. We have to actually dissect the atmosphere to see what type of ingredients are there for severe storms to occur. The first thing we look for is shear, and that's within the atmosphere when we have the changing of wind direction or speed, and sometimes that occurs at different levels of the atmosphere coming down to the surface. We also looked for lift within the atmosphere as well. That is often caused by a cold front that moves in that lifts some of that warmer air as it's moving in with a squall line that will have a lot of rain and storms in association with it. The other thing we look for is instability. And sometimes you hear us talking about the CAPE forecast. That is the convective available potential energy within a storm. And we look at that to see the ability for the air to rise. So it's either the lift or some of that instability that causes the air to rise. And then, of course, we have to have enough moisture with that as well, whether or not that's deep tropical moisture or moisture feeding in up ahead of a cold front with a system that would be moving our way. So whenever we see severe storms moving in, we are committed to issue an 11 Alive Weather Impact Alert to let you know as we are approaching the day when any storms could develop. We want to alert you to make you be aware so that you can prepare for any storms moving in. One of the ways and one of the tools that we use within a weather impact alert is letting you know when it would come in, what type of impacts we would see, and what you need to do to keep you and your family safe. This is just one example where we might say the storms are more likely to occur between 2 and 6 o'clock on any particular afternoon. The main threat or impact would be the storms that will be developing that could have thunder and lightning with them, maybe even strong winds or tornadoes. And we also want to make sure that we tell you what you need to do to keep your family safe. In this situation, we would want you to identify a safe place where we may have strong winds that could bring down some trees. So every storm has those different ingredients and also the different impacts that we would want to point out to you every time. You often see us using what we call convective outlooks, and these are issued by the Storm Prediction Center. And we often show these maps with the different colors, showing the slight risk, the moderate risk for severe storms, or the enhanced risk for severe storms. So this is what those colors mean and a breakdown of what we're looking at. That level 1 of 5 risk, the green color, would be a marginal risk, meaning that any storms would be isolated or short-lived. You would see winds 40 to 60 miles an hour, hail up to 1 inch in diameter, and they would be a low tornado risk, usually with a level 1 risk. It goes up to a level 2 risk when we have, it's called the slight risk, and that means instead of isolated storms, they may be a little more scattered or a little more numerous in the area. Any storms would be short-lived, but it is possible that we could have some tornadoes with that and also some strong winds or wind damage associated with it too. A level 3 risk is called the enhanced risk, and that's when we could have numerous severe storms moving through. They could be a little more persistent and long-lived, and we could have a few tornadoes with those and numerous reports of wind damage in association with that too. It gets a little more intense when we're talking about a level 4 or a level 5 risk. A level 4 risk is considered a moderate risk. You would have widespread severe storms. They would be long-lived. We could have strong tornadoes with that. That causes widespread wind damage, and you could also have some large hail in association with that. The highest risk that is very rare, but we have had level 5 risks here before, that is called the high risk, and that means you would have widespread severe weather, long-lived storms, you would have numerous tornadoes that would be classified as a tornado outbreak, and you could have significant widespread damage with that. So these are just some of the tools that we use to help you prepare yourself in advance of when severe storms are moving your way. So of course, we not only would be issuing those alerts, but we would also be committing to extended coverage on 11 Alive Plus. And we often use that as a way where we can go in and explain to you with long-form coverage what is happening in our area. And even though we may not break in on TV at that time, we would be on our streaming app letting you know what's happening with these storms that are moving through. One of the things that people often ask us about when you have storms is, how does hail form? It doesn't seem right sometimes that we can be hot outside in the springtime with temperatures above freezing, yet ice falls from the sky. Meteorologist Nicole Hartford explains how hail forms and how you can be safe from it.
Thunderstorms don't always produce hail, but it is a common occurrence here in North Georgia. Most of the time, it's no big deal, but depending on the size, those hailstones can be destructive. So how does hail form? Most of the time when we have ice pellets falling from the sky in the form of sleet or snow, temperatures here at the surface are cold, but that's not the case with hail. This typically happens when temperatures are warm. It all has to do with the temperatures further up into the atmosphere. So let's bring in our storm cloud. In every storm cloud, we have what we call updrafts. These are just winds that move from the surface of the earth up into the atmosphere. These develop and then bring in particles of water into these clouds. As you go higher up into the atmosphere, the temperatures generally through the first section of the atmosphere get colder with height. So once you're above a certain level, temperatures drop down below freezing, and that's where we have our freezing line in a cloud. So it's exactly what you'd think. Below that freezing line, temperatures are above freezing. Above that freezing line, temperatures are below freezing. So these particles of water that are pulled up into the cloud go above the freezing line and then freeze as little ice pellets, or what we know as hail. These then fall down below the freezing line. They run into other hail pellets or other droplets of water and move up above the freezing line and get bigger. And this process continues over and over until the hailstones are too big or too heavy for these updrafts to support, and they eventually fall down to the ground. How big the hailstones are able to get has to do with the strength of these updrafts. In order to be considered a severe thunderstorm because of the hail, hailstones must be 1 inch. That's about quarter sized. That's when our updrafts are 49 miles per hour. That's what's required to produce quarter sized hail. Let's bring the hailstones back to a somewhat more realistic size. As these get bigger, then we get our golf ball sized hail, which is 1 3/4 inches, and that requires 64 mile per hour updrafts. The next level up is tennis ball sized hail that requires 2.5 inches in diameter and 77 mile per hour updrafts. Baseball sized hail, which is very destructive, 2 3/4 inches in diameter and requires 81 mile per hour updrafts. And then grapefruit sized hail, which we have never seen here in Metro Atlanta. That's 4.5 inches in diameter, and wind speeds, our updrafts, are about 98 miles per hour. Now, not all hail is the same. It can have different textures. A lot of times that hail is smooth and spherical, and when we see that kind of hail, that means that conditions are a little less turbulent. So the hailstones develop, they fall down below the freezing line, they get a layer of water that then freezes as they go up above the freezing line. Sometimes though, when winds are a little bit more turbulent, those hailstones are pushed around, they bump into each other, and instead that layer of water acts as glue to essentially adhere multiple hailstones together. That's how we get bumpy or spiked hail. Now, both of these can do significant damage, especially as they get up in size, but that bumpy or spiked hail can lead to additional damage, especially on cars and the roof of your house.
Thunderstorms can produce more than hail and strong winds. They can also develop rotation and even tornadoes, and it's a pretty complex recipe for a tornado to develop. Meteorologist Melissa Nord shows us how tornadoes can develop and what kind of damage we can see from them.
Tornadoes can happen any time of year here in Georgia, but we need the special ingredients to come together for tornadoes to form. And a lot of that has to do with wind shear in the atmosphere. That's when we have winds at the surface coming out of one direction, but winds in the higher elevations of the atmosphere coming in from a slightly different direction and stronger in force and in magnitude. This creates horizontal wind shear, a rotating column of air. Now, we need a strong thunderstorm to come in and help to move that column of air into the vertical. So a strong updraft helps to lift and rotate that column of air into the vertical, and that can create a rotating thunderstorm. As the rotating thunderstorm tightens up, we see a lowering base called a wall cloud, and if that tightens up a little bit more, that goes downward and forms a funnel. A funnel isn't on the ground. If that rotating funnel reaches the ground, that condensation funnel, then we have a tornado. Now, tornadoes can happen every single month of the year, but you see there's some pretty big differences based on what time of the calendar year we're in versus how many tornadoes we see. These are tornado frequency for the entire state from 1950 to 2024. You can see we do see a fair amount in January and February, but our peak of severe weather and tornado season happens in March, April, and into May. And then we generally see a dip off as we head into the summer months. They're much less frequent. And that late summer to early fall time frame is due to tropical systems normally. And then we get our winter severe weather season when we see another uptick in those tornadoes, November, December, and into January as well. And a lot of the tornadoes we see here in the state are weaker, okay? They're much weaker on the scale, on the enhanced Fujita scale. Let's talk about what type of destruction we see based on the wind speeds in the tornadoes. We don't know the wind speeds until the tornado's already done and the National Weather Service surveys the damage. And these are the types of things they're looking for. When we have EF0 tornadoes, these are winds between 65 and 86 miles per hour. We generally see pretty mild damage. A few shingles might be ripped off. There might be some branches of trees ripped off, damage to gutters and siding. As we get into EF1 though, which are also fairly common in our state, we start to see that damage going up. A little bit of damage to the roof. Small trees can be uprooted and some of them snapped up at the higher levels as well. As we get into EF2 strength, that's considered a strong tornado. The winds in EF2 tornadoes are at least 111 miles per hour up to 135 miles per hour. At that point, we see roofs or portions of roofs ripped away altogether. We start to see really large trees uprooted. And then we also can see that at EF2 strength, some cars can be flipped over altogether. You see all that damage that just happened? We now have an EF3 tornado here in our studio. Winds of at least 136 miles per hour. Entire upper roofs of houses and upper floors of houses can be destroyed. The trees start to see bark actually stripped from the sides, and the power outages become much more widespread. EF4, incredibly rare for us. The last EF4 tornado in the state of Georgia was back in 2022 in Bryan County, but our last tornado in North Georgia that was EF4 strength was our Coweta County Noonan tornado in 2021. At that point, we see extreme damage. Houses that are not fastened to the ground well, we see them completely destroyed, and the damage is just unfathomable to think of. We have never seen an EF5 tornado in the state of Georgia. Luckily, at that point, it doesn't matter how well the house is built, the home is destroyed and there's forever markings on the ground.
When we get into a weather event, you may find that you are in either a severe weather watch or a severe weather warning. And that is the question that we are asked more and more. People just have a hard time understanding the difference between a watch and a warning. Meteorologist Danielle Moss joins us now telling us how to tell the difference between a watch and a warning and what you can do in your home to stay safe.
Whenever there is a threat for severe weather, it's very important that you know the difference between a watch, a warning, and an emergency. Those definitely cause different actions that need to be taken place. So whenever there's a watch issued, that means be prepared. The conditions are favorable. You could be seeing a tornado if it's a tornado watch issued, or a severe thunderstorm if there is a severe thunderstorm watch issued. Now for a warning, you need to take action. It's very important that you already have those plans in place, because once a tornado warning is issued, that means that we've seen it on our radar, or it has been spotted by a trained spotter. So very important, especially if there's any threat of nighttime storms, you know the difference between a watch and a warning. Now the next here, emergency. That is for a warning as well. You should be already taking action if that happens, but an emergency means that there is a severe threat to life or to property, and that is issued. All of these are issued by the National Weather Service. They are the ones that make sure that we are the safest during severe weather. Now, when we're talking about these warnings, what is the criteria? Now, a base severe thunderstorm warning means that the winds are greater than 58 miles an hour, or the quarter size hail is large. So that is the base for your severe thunderstorm warning. Considerable means that there could be considerable damage. So those winds are greater than 70 miles an hour, or you're talking about golf ball size hail. That can definitely cause some major damage when we're talking about hail that size falling from the sky. Destructive, that's the third tag. That means that winds are greater than 80 miles an hour, and that hail is larger than a baseball. So whenever you get a destructive severe thunderstorm warning, it goes the next step. In fact, all of your cellular devices will issue one of these. It's an emergency alert for your area, and it prompts your phone to make a noise so that you are aware that there could be a destructive storm in your area with winds greater than 80 miles an hour. So where do you go? What do you do if any of these warnings are issued? Well, I'll let you know. Come inside with me. It's always good to know where you and your family are going to go in case severe weather strikes. If you have a basement, great. Go there. Make sure you're away from the windows and that you and your family are safe. But if you don't have a basement, it's totally okay. You can find a closet like this one that's away from the windows and you and your family can fit inside just in case severe weather strikes.
Just figuring that out, like lowest floor in your home, interior room, closet, away from windows, put as many walls between you and the outside. All that stuff we've gone over, like, you know, all the time, but it's always a good reminder.
Just in case you don't have a closet, the bathroom is another great option. Make sure that you get away from those windows. Everyone has one, and you can stay safe in case severe weather arrives.
Just anytime throughout the year, I think we need to be prepared that a good majority of our severe weather can happen after dark. So just that's even more reason to make sure you have adequate ways of, you know, getting warning information, updates to, you know, the weather situation, what's happening.
In addition to your cell phone, it's always great to have multiple ways to get severe weather notifications. There's different types of severe weather radios. This one will alert you whenever there is a watch or a warning issued, and it's battery operated, or you can plug it in. This option, you can also charge your cell phone device, and it has a radio so that you can listen in case there is an emergency broadcast. It's always important to have an extra light in case you lose power so that you can see how to get in and out of your home in case of an emergency.
And we get a lot of people that kind of move in. They're new people, especially around Atlanta, like coming to the area almost every day that, you know, have never really experienced severe weather like we could get here in the Southeast. So it's good to kind of go over these things a couple times a year.
Not every thunderstorm is classified as severe. Sometimes we have general thunderstorms, which are still impactful. Water and lightning are the two main causes for fatalities here in the United States. Meteorologist Chesley McNeil breaks down those threats.
Thunderstorms don't necessarily have to be severe to create major impacts. Non-severe thunderstorms create excessive rainfall, which leads to flooding, which can be dangerous, and also lightning, which could be very deadly. So we have to be very careful out there, especially when it comes to flooding. You can't really see how deep the water is or how fast it's running, and so that could cause problems. And a lot of people lose their lives trying to cross water because they think their cars are able to do that. Well, in a situation like this where you see a flooded road closed, don't try to go around that barrier, because if that water is fast enough and deep enough, it can displace your car. So we give you the old adage of turn around, don't drown. That's the safest thing to do, especially when it comes to flooding. It doesn't take much water at all when it comes to flooding. A human being can be displaced by water 6 inches deep if it's moving very fast. A car, maybe a foot. That's about it. It will displace your car like you saw in that last graphic. Or I have an SUV, I got big tires, you think you can go through? If it's 18 to 24 inches, it can sweep your car away or even your SUV, and you don't want that to take place at all, folks. So let's talk about thunderstorms. Well, the scariest part of a thunderstorm typically is the noise that it makes. Not the lightning itself, right? The noise that it makes. But the lightning, when it hits the atmosphere, it expands rapidly and creates a noise. Sometimes it's a low rumble, or it could be a very sharp, loud boom at times. It's the lightning that can be very, very deadly. In fact, lightning from the base of a cloud to the surface seeks to strike the nearest thing to the base of that cloud. So oftentimes will strike tall buildings or a church steeple or trees, where a lot of people like to go to shelter themselves from rain. Well, that's where we see the highest number of deaths when it comes to lightning. Also over water, if you're in a boat or in an open field or playing baseball or playing golf or in the yard doing a lot of work. In open spaces, that's what you want to avoid. Seek shelter by going inside a building, especially with one with a metal frame, so the lightning, when it strikes that frame or that building, it will go down the sides and it will be grounded. Stay safe out there, folks, even in thunderstorms that are non-severe.
24/7, 11 Alive is here for you to help you get through those storms, whether it's in the springtime, summer, fall, or winter. We'll be issuing weather impact alerts to prepare you for the storms and to help you get through those storms. And one of the ways we want to get you through those storms is with long-form weather discussions and weather forecasts right here on 11 Alive Plus. We can do extended weather there at any time in order to help keep you and your family safe. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Holcomb. Thanks for joining us for this extended severe weather special right here on 11 Alive Plus.